important contributors to this space have been anon and are currently anon. And so I think it's, definitely something that allows for, this kind of like ability to just kind of be able to present yourself to the public based on merits and not sort of based on anything else. And I think that's really kind of the reason why I went down the anon route.
Hi there, and welcome to the Parachain Auctions podcast, hosted by Kraken. I'm Brian Hoffman, Crypto Platform Product Lead, and I'm glad you could join me out here on the cutting edge of crypto technologies. On this show, you'll hear from leaders and innovators around the world building parachains on Polkadot and Kusama. Tune in for insights from the best and brightest about their new projects. Whether this is the first you've heard of parachains or you're a DeFi aficionado, come with us behind the scenes as we explore the technology of the future today. Today on the show, we have Brainjar, who's co-founder and head of product at Composable Finance. Welcome to the show, Brainjar.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Yeah, I feel like I know you so well already, like we've done this multiple times. We had a little rough start here. But before we get started talking about Picasso, I just really want to talk quickly about the fact that you're coming to us with a pseudonym Brainjar. I'm assuming that your parents didn't name you that at birth, and no video feed. So what's going on with that? Is this a security conscious decision, or is there something else going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think more recently, I think it's like not super like something that's done often in the Dotsama ecosystem as far as like a parachain founder, but definitely in the ETH ecosystem, we see sort of like a lot of founders being anon. And so I think when we started all these things, that was just kind of an option, just given the crackdowns we saw in 2017, 2018, et cetera. And I just think that it just makes a lot of sense for founders that just want to work unencumbered in this space to just be anon. And I think, some sort of like important contributors to this space have been anon and are currently anon. And so I think it's, definitely something that allows for, this kind of like ability to just kind of be able to present yourself to the public based on merits and not sort of based on anything else. And I think that's really kind of the reason why I went down the anon route.
Yeah, I certainly think we've seen that our share of anonymous or pseudonymous people through the years in blockchain. And I think it, just based on things we've seen before in the past, safety issues, security issues, probably makes smart sense to do so. But anyway, clever name. So you're coming to us from Composable Finance, who's responsible for the Canary parachain Picasso, which is an interesting name. Maybe you could help us understand, real quick, what is Picasso and how did you guys come up with the name?
Yeah, sure. So I guess what we're really trying to do for Composable, I guess a lot of people, it's particularly in this past year, 2021, there's been a lot of discussion about the cross-chain future, this multi-chain ecosystem. We see, new ecosystems popping up. Seems like every quarter now there's like a new season, whether it's Solana, whether it's Avalanche, et cetera. And there's yet to sort of be the infrastructure that allows people to do things cross ecosystem and have different applications be able to communicate with each other seamlessly. And there's kind of this networking fabric doesn't really exist at the moment, and it will be necessary in the future. And so when we set out to build Composable, the thing that kept on sticking with me was it really felt like we're not creating paint, we're not creating a canvas, we're rather creating a picture. And we're trying to bring all these pieces of infrastructure together and allow people to create art. And that art is manifested in the creation of new applications that may be able to function, with having different parts of it communicating cross ecosystem, cross chain, cross layer. And so when we set out to sort of think about the brand and the image of Composable, you can sort of tell from our website that's kind of the image we sort of tried to go for, with people in our community being called composers. And so when we decided to think about the name for the Picasso parachain, we really see the parachain as kind of a testing ground for this vision, and more particularly for members of the community to come and paint, the picture that they want to see, leveraging the tools that we're creating. And so in many ways, Picasso is the name of the parachain, but is also kind of the name of the people that we envision sort of coming to build on the parachain. And so, yeah, that's we went with Picasso just because that's, one of the greatest artists ever. And so that's kind of was the ethos behind it.
So a question I'm sure most people listening have is, do you own a Picasso? Have you made enough money from being pseudonymous developer to own your own Picasso?
I do not, but it's definitely something I'd like to aim for.
So Picasso is your Kusama parachain, obviously. Do you guys have any vision or ideas around launching something similar on Polkadot, or is that not in the plans yet?
Yeah, so the name of our Polkadot parachain is going to be called the Composable Parachain. I definitely did want to go with something unique and interesting, but that's kind of like not. We just decided to go with Composable Parachain for simplicity.
So a lot of the projects consider their Kusama parachain as just being kind of a testing ground for their what will eventually be their Polkadot parachain. Do you guys envision that being the same, or is there some unique aspect of what you want to do on Polkadot compared to your Kusama parachain, or how are you thinking of that?
Yeah, so really one of the major parts of our parachain that I think is super exciting is the ability for projects to deploy as palettes, which are kind of these modular frameworks that serve as applications on the Picasso parachain. And only kind of like the best palettes will be able to be voted up into the Polkadot parachain by governance. And so that's kind of like the vision, is that the Polkadot parachain takes the best pieces that the community deems fit to exist in the sort of more secure environment that the Polkadot parachain enables.
So I don't think we've ever really delved too deeply into, what a palette is on the platform. I think it was briefly discussed back in the beginning of the series, but maybe you could just quickly, explain, what does it mean to build a palette? Is that just like a code module, or like how does that work?
Yeah, so I mean, you have basically players like sort of like Moonbeam, who are sort of more focused on smart contract deployment. So really fundamentally, the easiest way to explain this is, what is the difference between a palette and a smart contract? And so a palette is basically, imagine you could write your protocol in such a way where you could also alter the runtime of the blockchain itself to further optimize your protocol. So like, there's lots of things in ETH, for instance, that are super gas intensive because the Ethereum blockchain is not custom made for that specific application. That's kind of where the whole like, oh, I want application specific chains mentality kind of came from. And so what Substrate allows you to do is to be able to tailor specifically the runtime of a blockchain itself for the best execution of a specific protocol. So instead of writing a protocol as a smart contract and have that sort of need to sort of fit into this generic framework, you can write a palette and have that basically deploy directly into the runtime of the parachain, thereby sort of allowing for a lot more latency, cheaper fees, etc. So think of it as kind of like blockchain, like a dApp that has kind of blockchain based alterations and modularity that can be incorporated into chains themselves. It's kind of one of the more like slept on features of the ecosystem, I think, because I think a lot of people really try to focus on how is this related to ETH, or like how does this compare to ETH and other sort of L1s. But here fundamentally the main difference is a parachain can consistently change what is in the parachain itself. And I think that's super powerful.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think a lot of people had questions around like, well, how come there's no smart contract language in in Polkadot? And it's like, well, yeah, but if you're really adopting the palette approach, then that's something you could easily put in there, and then the whole entire network's not kind of like tethered down by like any one specific thing, which Ethereum is obviously suffering from that a little bit just because it's kind of one of the earliest versions of this. But when you turn back to look at composability, I mean, I think that concept is something that people have kind of bandied about for several years. It's always used as a buzzword, I think in the decentralized app space. But what does Pacaso bring to the table, though, that to differentiate itself from maybe other solutions that are similar?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, our solution has you can think of what we're doing as kind of like the quote unquote innovation availability layer. So what we're trying to do is allow communication and transfers across the Polkadot, Cosmos, and Ethereum ecosystems, and Ethereum sort of including EVM compatible chains and L2s. And so what this means is we're not like rewriting a new message format or creating like new sort of paradigms for cross-chain communication. We're rather leveraging what's already out there, such as IBC, such as XCM, to allow for communication across these different ecosystems. And what's been so difficult so far across other projects is a lot of them sort of come in to try to reinvent the wheel. And we think that the wheel is kind of, each ecosystem kind of has its own wheel already. So why not just create a fabric that just allows these different wheels to basically be built up into something more elegant and useful? And so that's kind of what we bring to the table. I guess more specifically, like bringing things like UST over to Polkadot is something that we hope to enable. Allowing the IBC-enabled ecosystem to participate in the Dot-Sama ecosystem and vice versa is kind of one of our main goals. And I think beyond that, we sort of are kind of one of the only chains in the ecosystem that has adopted this palette approach. So for instance, like anybody that would like to be able to tap directly into this infrastructure we're creating, say you want to build a lending protocols such as the one that we're co-incubating with HydraDX called Angular. If you write it, because it's a palette deploying on Pacaso, it's now able to make use of all these kind of cross-chain communication infrastructure that we're building directly into the runtime of the chain. So what this kind of allows for is now people can write natively cross-chain enabled applications by deploying on Pacaso. And so, and we sort of invite like several different projects that may not necessarily want to become parachains. They're completely free and welcome to deploy on Pacaso as well. So I think really like our two differentiating key factors is one, this kind of communication infrastructure, and two, this kind of like ecosystem minded approach. I think a lot of parachains in the ecosystem are seeking kind of the ability to build out an ecosystem. But sort of for us, it's like a first and foremost priority to sort of bring people from the community and get them building on what we're creating.
Yeah, I think it's great that you guys are working to connect a lot of these other chains, more easily. And it's not just layer one chains either, right? Like I believe I heard that you guys are trying to get, to be able to interact with like Arbitrum and maybe other layer twos, possibly. Is that true?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah. So, so part of this, whole ecosystem, is that it's pretty new and it's growing really fast. But like now that you guys have won a parachain and you're starting to set your sights on Polkadot in the future, I mean, how are you guys thinking about scaling up in your own organization? I mean, like you said that you're anonymous. Are you anonymous with your teammates all the time, or like how do you guys think about building an organization like that?
Yeah, no. So I'm the only anon, but people internally in our organization know who I am. But yeah, I mean, we're currently 31 people at the moment, and we're like trying to expand the team to sort of more so. I think we've spent a lot of time since when we were founded, focused on this core infrastructure. And while that core infrastructure will still continue to be paramount, we still need to pretty soon start ramping up quite significantly our kind of developer relations and ecosystem development sort of branches. I think that's like something that's super important for any parachain. Like having a parachain is a responsibility, and it's not really just the responsibility of you to basically create something that's interesting, but also to serve as a place for people to create things. And so that's kind of why our focus will be that in the coming months.
So in terms of like what kind of people you'd like to see maybe, starting work on composable finance products, like what advice would you give to people who want to do this type of work? Like what are you guys looking for exactly?
So I think we're looking for, number one, people who want to build cross-chain applications, and people who sort of understand what is kind of like, what does this cross-chain future actually look like, and are excited to basically build protocols that like natively are deployed on different ecosystems and can communicate with one another. And so I guess we're sort of looking for, developers across any of these ecosystems to sort of come in and leverage our technology. Most immediately, kind of two camps. One, leveraging our SDK, so Solidity developers can write things that allow for their applications to go from multi-chain to now cross-chain. And then secondly is people who want to write substrate palettes. So yeah, I think those are kind of the initial two camps.
Very cool. Well, it's awesome that you guys are hiring. I know a lot of people are excited to get into space. We often see people like chefs and different various jobs looking to get into crypto. So I wish you best of luck on finding good people. So what we do on this show, every time we have someone new on an episode, we ask them this one question, and I'm sure you're familiar with the slogan "Expect Chaos" that was developed over there in the Kusama ecosystem. So in that spirit, we always ask for what we call a chaos score, which is how chaotic has it been working on Kusama? It's a number 1 to 10, and I'm just curious, what would you rate how chaotic it has been for Composable Finance to produce a parachain?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's probably like a 7. So, and the explanation for that is like there really is like several different things that need to be thought about when you're embarking upon an endeavor like this. It's not just the technology; it's also the like communicating with key stakeholders, but also communicating with the community and getting them excited about what you're building from day one. And so I think for us, it's been a lot of like, learning about how to tap into this new ecosystem for us that now has made me super appreciative and even more excited about the Kusama ecosystem as a result.
What would you say was like the absolute biggest challenge you had actually rolling it out?
I mean, I would say like, we sort of went for the earlier slots. We weren't successful. And I think it was just because like, yeah, getting these slots is definitely an expensive endeavor, and you really need the full entire community backing, right? And I think in the early days, like we are a technical project, and I think we had a difficult time sort of trying to explain it to the broader kind of KSM community. But I think that was like a really big sort of lesson for us, where now we're sort of a lot more communicative to not only our community, but also to the broader Kusama community, and sort of always trying to find ways to make, say our token model, or find like products building on top of us, finding ways for the Picasso community to be able to sort of have a say in what they're building, et cetera. So I think it's been very eye-opening for us to sort of now really have a handle on the type of community that is the KSM community.
So some of the parachains that won early on, seem to get kind of the lion's share of attention. I think, I don't know if you agree, but it seems like you guys and maybe some of the other chains are a little bit like of the lesser known groups. But, like, what do you think are some ways that you guys could, get your name more out there? Do you think it's going to be just like people are going to see how great the Parachain is and build up the community organically? Or do you guys have some thoughts on like a strategy for really putting your name out there and becoming one of those like top tier, like everybody knows it, everybody has to have it, parachains for Polkadot?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things is just going to be kind of like demonstrated traction on the Kusama side. So like we do launch pretty shortly, and like the plans that we have for the Picasso parachain kind of already builds like a small mini ecosystem for us. And I think as we ramp up towards the Polkadot parachain, people will start to sort of see that, hey, this is a parachain with an actual ecosystem already, as opposed to parachains that set up with no ecosystem and then set up kind of like ecosystem development funds to do so. It's like, because we've sort of flipped that, I think people understand our intentions are like build first and market later. Versus some other groups. And so I think like we're excited to hopefully be able to get the same level of traction and support that we got for Kusama for the dot auctions as well.
So one of the great things about Polkadot seems to be the ease of interoperability between the other parachains as well. I mean, are you guys looking at any kind of upcoming collaborations or team ups with any of the other projects or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have a great relationship right now with Basilisk and the Hydra DX team. And so I think, definitely in the Kusama ecosystem, we'll be collaborating on a whole host of projects. And then in the Polkadot ecosystem, definitely could find use cases for some of the things that Akala is working on. We're also interested in working with Karura as well and Kintsugi. So a lot of these teams, I think, that are creating core primitives, we're definitely very interested in working with.
Okay, I have to ask, your parachain's called Picasso, but are you guys going to be minting some limited NFTs related to your parachain?
Yeah, I mean, that's stay tuned. That's definitely in the cards for sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know it was short, but we just wanted to get a chance to talk with you about Picasso, let our listeners know, and congratulate you on the great work. Where can people go to find out more about Composable and Picasso and what the team's up to?
Yeah, sure. So just composable.finance is our site. Our Twitter is @composablefin. You can follow me at 0xbrainjar on Twitter. Otherwise, we're in our Discord, so just come on by and ask some questions.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, thank you so much, and good luck with everything in the future. Thanks again to our guest, 0xbrainjar. It was great learning more about Picasso and Composable Finance. Make sure you like, subscribe, and review us on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll be sure to bring you along as we get a backstage pass in the world of parachain auctions. Until next time, I'm Brian Hoffman, and this has been the Parachain Auctions Podcast. This content is not financial or investment advice. All interviews and discussions are opinions only. Kraken does not endorse the accuracy of this content. None of the following information should be construed as a recommendation to support any specific parachain project or to participate in parachain auctions in general. See our terms of service for more information.